This week, I went to the premiere week of a film called September 5, which has the copyright date of 2024 on it. And it is 2025. So I'm going, okay. I double checked. Yes, this is the premiere week in the Netherlands of this movie. Whole stuff on the Wikipedia about how this happened. It's not. It's an indie movie. I think it probably counts as an indie movie. It's a German movie in English with English actors. So start off in English, but German production. That they took it to festivals, and there it was picked up for wider distribution. And festivals are in the summer, so last summer. Once it was picked up for distribution, they took it to, I think it was either this, there was another festival, I don't know if it was the same one. There was another movie there, it was a documentary movie that had a very current, touchy subject, and there were problems. So they decided to hold off on releasing this for a while. And so they have been incrementally releasing this movie. And now it came to the Netherlands. So this is how we got here in 2025 for a film that's already over half a year old. We're not a channel that does new movies as a mainstay. We do old movies, so that's okay. But history is interesting. So it's a German movie, but with English cast, Germans where there need to be Germans, an occasional French person. There's one French person because the subject matter is the one that caused them so much problems. And it's a story about an historical event that for Germans is very alive, and for maybe the rest of the world a little bit less, but because of the subject matter it became alive again. It is the attack on the Olympic Village in 1972 in Munich, the Olympic Games, where Israelis were attacked. The Israeli delegation was attacked, and that's what this is about. And from the making of, there is a making of, and it's on YouTube. I do recommend seeing that after you've seen the movie. It was very interesting. They started making this movie from that history, and then okay, we would like to do that history as a film. But now what? And so they got some research in, and what is most known about the event is that it was televised by the sports channel that happened to be on at the time this stuff happened. And so they looked at the footage. There's a lot of footage left, which is wonderful. So lots of stuff you can research. And one of the people who was in the control room at the time is still alive. This is over 50 years ago, so that is not everybody's going to be, but this was a young man at the time, and he's still around, and they talked to him, and he told them about his experience in the control room, getting all that information and watching it happen. One of the problems they would have had, any person who does a history thing has that problem, is how do I show a terrible thing in such a way that A, it's watchable, B, it's truthful, which is for the Germans very important. This is one of the maybe number one thing. It has to be the truth. We're not doing it if it's not the truth. So he realized that this guy is telling him the truth. A lot, actual truth, life truth that you can use. And so they decided to do this movie, this story from the people who did this telecast. Because that's also an interesting story in itself. And that's what this film is. So the real story is that ABC was telecasting through a satellite, there was one satellite, and you had to book time off on the satellite for transmission. So they had a couple of slots for telecasting the Olympics. And the film doesn't quite tell you, but I do know that about the Olympics. The Olympics has its own recording setup, and then they give these feeds to whatever station is going to put it on for whatever country. For the States, it was ABC. So ABC had a control room in Munich with feeds coming in from the boxing and the swimming and the fencing and whatever. And then they had a fella in the studio presenting, and Jim McKay. And he would introduce, talk about, give some story backgrounds, which was ABC was known for giving. Like the modern way we do sports now is like give a background. Oh, you have this guy riding a horse. Who is this guy? Who is the horse? Etc. Etc. That was new at the time, and now it's so normal. And one of the reasons I like sports is I get the story of the guy and the horse, and I want to know why. You know, that's interesting. And so this presenter presents the stories, and they do some interviews. The ABC may send out some people with a film camera and a sound man and record an interview, and then they develop it, and then they put that on air. But so the actual boxing matches and the fencing stuff are recorded by Olympics themselves and sent over. So they are doing that part. And one night they are heading off for a weekend. And there's a noise. And at first some people say, oh, I know what that is. They're in Germany in 1972. It's only 27 years after World War II. And the older people, they know this noise. It's gunshots. And the younger people go, are you sure? Yep. Yeah, that sounds like gunshots. And yeah, they are close enough in the studio, close enough to hear that something happened. They have a lady who is German, who is the translator. She does subtitles and translators and stuff like that. And so the first thing you do is she goes and checks into Bayerische Rundfunk, which is the local channel in Munich. Rundfunk is radio, to hear what they hear, and she translates for them. Just really well done. And the actress is German, and the chief of who's still there. The other chief is not there, but he's chief number 2 is there, and between them they sort of realize, okay, they hear there's been a kidnapping or a hostage taking of the Israelis in the Olympic Village. And what are we supposed to do? Keep just reporting the boxing? Or do something with this? And if that, what? And how would that look? Because they have like a studio, they have two cameras in the studio, and that's it. They have nothing else. And then somebody says, how about I think we have from the up there and over there, we have a view of the quarters of where they are. We could take the effing heavy camera, the studio camera that's meant to be in a studio with a big hefty cable, out onto the patio, put a lens on it, and they do. And they get a pretty good look at it. And they go, can we put that on? And I like about this movie is because they go through this whole thing is you get history, but very much as people experienced it. Because that's how they never actually see anything or anyone, certainly not at the start. They hear a lot from the radio, and then later from the television, and then later there's an interview with somebody, and so you get a reflective history, and it feels, because it's from the account of the person who was actually there, and I think they talked to a couple of other people who they could scrounge up, they were there. You get a real actual account. The thing that they also did, because Germans are known for precision, and one of the precision things they did is they said, well, if we're going to have a studio environment, we want the 1972 studio environment. We want it all. We want those effing heavy cameras, and they want them to be working, and we want the soundboard, and we want the whole entire wall of televisions and they want them to be working. We don't want to do this, oh, we'll put a green screen thing and then we'll do it after. No. We want it to be on there. And one of the things they did was absolutely brilliant. And this ABC footage of the original event, which I think they probably all still have, this Jim McKay, who was the presenter, is on this film. It's Jim McKay. Jim McKay is not here anymore. This is the real Jim McKay. But because he's always on the little screen. And you never ever get the moment where somebody walks into the studio and actually tries to... They don't put in an actor. They don't do that. It's very smart. And the other person who would have been a signature of this event was a chap who was always on the phone. And a reporter who was in the compound, and once the thing was cordoned off by the police, couldn't get out. But he kept getting in phone contact with ABC Studio, because he was one of theirs. And this guy would have been on the TV talking. And so you know him as a talking voice. And the way he talks, it's the timbre. The actor who does that, because again, this guy is also not here anymore. So they have an actor putting in his extra bits. McKay has no extra bits at all. This guy has some extra bits, so you have some conversation between the control room and him. And he does it in that same timbre and the same style. It's the precision of this movie that makes this movie. It is history, but presented as a... call it a European style thriller. This is a style that I think Americans don't do this. Americans, when they do a thriller, there has to be a good guy and a bad guy very clearly, and there must be a heroic moment with guns and stuff like that. European thrillers are not like that. Situational thriller, you don't know what's going on, and you may or may not get to see the resolve of it. And in history, people figure their stuff out afterwards. But yeah, this is a thriller, a European-style thriller. Once I figured out it was indeed a German make, that made absolute sense. This movie suddenly makes a lot more sense. Not that it doesn't make sense. This is it's almost like a play, because it's all in the confines of the studio. And a couple of people outside, but not many. And it's so... it's not claustrophobic, but it is claustrophobic, if you know what I mean. Because that's how the event happened to these people. It is this event happening to these people who are not any major players in this event as such, other than putting it on the wider television. The event itself of having a live hostage situation televised on TV was new at the time. It was so new they had no idea. They had no idea what to do with it. Should we pass this off to news? Sort of, no, we don't want to use the scoop. And news is not here. News is in the States. We're in Munich. We're here. So, and getting enough time on the satellite, just like, you know, of course this needs time on the satellite. Yeah, but somebody else has to give up time on the satellite. There's just one satellite. You know? They have a nomination for an Oscar for the script. So that's the Oscars that's been and gone, so they didn't get anything other than nomination. But that's deserved nomination. When things are all right with a movie, you won't hear me talk about it, because it's right, it's good, it's fine. If it's really like, oh, then I'll talk about it again. But the script was good, the acting was good, the choice of subject was good, and we can talk about. It became topical again recently, but it's always been topical. So, and for the Germans to do this like 50 odd years after it happened, yeah, it's maybe time for them to do that. So that makes sense. I really like that once they had all these old techniques at their hand, they made good use of it. They showed us an Ampex tape being laid in, which is proto-videotape. And they showed that when they go on location, they send out somebody with a film camera and a separate soundman, and bring back the film reels, have them. There is a lady who develops them and sets them up ready to go in 15 minutes. She's fast. Another lady, also very fast. There's 3 ladies in this thing. The other lady is the titles lady. The lady who puts the little title like here. And she also doing it live. Like somebody says, "Oh, we need a title for this and that boxer," and she just whips it up on a board of letters. She picks on the board, and then takes a video of that to put into the feed on top of the feed. And showing that is so good, because if you have all this stuff ready and in working condition, the director said at the end of the making of, said, we have now a complete 1972 studio in working condition. All the stuff in the world is now here. They should make a couple of more movies with it. I'm sure they will. But it feels so real. There is a moment where the guy who's in the compound and phoning it in, Peter Jennings, they want to put him on air, and they sort of go, we have him on the phone. Don't have him on air. So somebody takes apart the phone, the sound outcoming, and solders and wire to it to get it into something else. And then later there was a third person who was only on walkie-talkie, and they sort of, we want to put you on air as well. We cannot put walkie-talkie on air. And it basically said, here's a microphone, bonk.
And they still do that. When they've got somebody on their phone, they will still put a microphone.
Yeah.
To your speaker.
Yeah, because that works best, but the quality is not brilliant, and for the walkie-talkie the quality is absolutely effing bad anyway. But in 1972, the communications they have is walkie-talkies if you're not too far, or phones. There's one, the lady
in CB band radio. Which is probably that walkie-talkie was probably a band radio.
Yeah, that's band radio, but it only has a very small radius. So when
it's point to point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when it becomes clear that this is not just a small incident, they're a sports reporters team. They are not news, so they're trying to invent. We were used to boxing and exciting things like that. This is something else, so they have to figure out what the hell they're doing. And when there comes a point where the hostages are moved to a secondary location, they send out a party, including our German translator, because they realized they need somebody who speaks German, and she's the only one. Out to the other location with a film camera and a sound man. And how are they going to talk? In the end, she calls from the one payphone in the entire surrounding countryside, where everybody else also wants to call back in. Hey, this, that, and the other is happening. It's the 1972. It's the boonies out there, you know. Even in Germany, in 1972. The way we have communication now, it's so different, and this movie shows it really well, how it breaks down. And there is so they smuggle in a camera into the compound to make some film pictures. I don't know if they actually ever came to anything, but they wanted to get some, so they smuggled the camera in with a guy, and the guy smuggles the stuff out again with wearing enormous reels of film, strapped, like 3 of them strapped to his stomach, and got out again. One of the things that you notice, and the reason why this entire thing happened in 1972, is that they have no idea of security. I mean, this guy going in and out of a cordoned off area with a bag with an enormous lens in it and like cans and cans of film, it's ridiculous. If these had been bombs, that would have been, you know. And the bad guys got into the compound in the same way. They just came on into the compound with guns. It was new at the time, and we have now much, much better security for this exact reason.
There was also still a concept that the athletes were amateur, and therefore the whole concept that they would be targets. But by the time everything starts to get televised, and everybody's they've already since 1900 whatever it was when they started, 4 or 5, it's been on the radio. The Olympics is not a low-key event. They've just never realized it.
Yeah.
These people are targets. And when politics comes into play, then it becomes serious. And, you know, they were a little slow on the uptake, really.
Yeah, and the Germans were particularly slow. It's an ongoing conversation, which is in this movie by way of our German lady, because somebody says something about her parents and what they knew, and she says, I'm not my parents," which is a good answer. Germany, at the time and for a long time after that, wanted to show themselves as, we are nice people. We don't have guns. We don't. Our police doesn't need guns because we are nice people, and so they wanted to. And with this Olympics, I think they wanted to show that they were an up and up people, and it was all safe, and they grossly underestimated the other forces that were going on that were not part. This is not part of the German narrative. This hostage taking. It's just happened to be in Germany, and it's a kind of a naivete that we're still suffering from for the Germans. I think in 1972, 27 years after World War II, they didn't want to show marching Germans with guns on whatever television or radio or whatever. So this was kind of, I feel it's kind of inevitable for this happening.
So I went to
Munich.
Yes, Munich, and I did a tour, like your normal bus tour thing. And they take you along to the Olympic Stadium and tell you about everything. It's really, really cool. One of the things that happened for München and Munich and that area at that time was it was a very backwards area. It had not been built up again after the Second World War because it was also an area that lots of bad things happened in. And putting on the Olympics had a similar effect as the Olympics in Seoul in South Korea, is they used it to really up the area. They changed everything from sad hovels to like nice places for people to live. This is the kind of thing that the Olympics is for. So for them it was let's march to the future, let's go for peace, let's make everybody comfortable. They were probably completely blindsided by, oh wait, we're going to have a political and of course a crime incident here.
Yeah, and now, I mean, this is now 50 years later. Every major city that does any sort of event, or even if they don't, have contingency plans. If this, that, or the other happens, here's a list of things you must do. Which is one of the problems that Munich has in this story, in this history, is that they had, okay, this happened, now what do we do? We have no idea. Because...
And things will have to have happened sometimes for people to go, oh, yeah. So this is a risk. Mm-hmm. Now we have to make sure this doesn't happen again. But you can't ward off every single risk. You can't think of them.
And they actually do now think of every single list. They have, Amsterdam, which we're nearby now, I'm sure has a list, especially in case of earthquake. There are no earthquakes here.
There are no earthquakes.
But there is a list. In case of earthquakes, do this, and this. And with the information technology that we have now, which is not 1972, is if you are any other place can have a list of any other thing for which we should never have to worry about. And again, this film does it correctly because some of the information they get is from the radio, from the local radio, Bayerische Rundfunk, from ARD, German Television 1, ZDF, German Television 2, and from the telex fax machine to confirm, because there were some rumors going around. The final confirmation you get from the telex. The telex is your internet, and it just gives you one piece of information.
Especially if the information comes from the Americans.
No, this was from the Germans. There was,
the security information.
No, the final information of what finally happened. They wanted confirmation to put it on. Watch the movie.
Yeah.
And I think this movie is how to do a historic event properly. You get witness statements and you go from that and be as truthful and as honestly as possible. Because this is a German movie, but Germans are not getting off out of this without torn clothing and bad stuff, you know?
Well, for showing a historical event, they chose a very useful point of view. Because it is the American reporters that are there for a different job, but they're not ready for this, but they can take it. They lived up to the moment.
The reason they picked this one, and it happens to be Americans, is that there's so much of the footage there, and the eyewitness, and people you can ask, and that's. There could have been any group that had a good reason to look at it, and it could have been it could have been the French if it happened to have been the French. So Americans are incidental.
Yeah, this group had the wherewithal to put a camera on that window.
Yes.
And that by itself makes them the most interesting group to.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The decision. What makes this group indeed interesting is the decision to actually stick with it and not let it be taken over by somebody else.
They lived up to the situation.
Yeah. And they're not even the main group. They're group B. And the main group was skiing in they were away. They couldn't be called back either. So they were completely incidental, and that makes it interesting. Incidental people, and then stepping up to the plate. They were all high octane people because they're doing sports commentary, so there are high octane people, but still they were sports and not news. Question, of course, is once it's all over, at the end, is one of the bosses asks the young lady, "Are you coming in tomorrow?" She says, "Yeah, coming in tomorrow." And she was just a translator, and she was on the front of a lot of this stuff. So I have here aftermath. I think every new security measure ever at any event where there's groups who are maybe in trouble with other groups for whatever reason, that's the thing. The film ends in we set out the entire credits. There is a separate section of the victims. It's a list of the Israeli victims. Because history. And history is not history if its people don't get killed. You know? Really good movie. Even if you see it on streaming, also good. You don't, for the people who are worried about that, you don't get to see anything that's objectionable. So this is definitely probably PG-15 or something like that, but only for content, not for only for talking, not for anything you can see. And that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.